London hosted the Summer Olympics in 1908. So 1908, 1948, and 2008. In 1908, the results for the 1,500-meter race were as follows. The Americans won, Melvin Shepard, with a time of 4 minutes, 3 seconds, .4. Closely followed by Great Britain, Harold Wilson, 4 minutes, 3 seconds, .6, and another Great Britain for bronze, Norman Hollows, 4 minutes, 4 seconds even. Now switch to present day. Not a single high school student who placed in their state championship, first, second, or third, in 2014 ran longer than 4 minutes and 2 seconds. Not a single one. The fastest was from Massachusetts, and he ran at 3 minutes, 45 seconds. So the men that won gold, silver, and bronze in 1908 in the Summer Olympics wouldn't have even placed at a high school state championship 100 years later. Not one. 1948, as I mentioned, London hosted the Olympics again. The fastest time was 3:49.8 by a Swede, another Swede 3:50.4, and someone from the Netherlands 3:50.4. Gold, silver, bronze, basically 3 minutes and 50 seconds. The Olympic champion from 1948, half a decade ago, would have placed fourth in this year's 2014's high school record books, fourth. And he would have missed, if he was competing on the real level he was competing on, which is the Olympics, he would have missed his country's Olympic team by 20 seconds. He wouldn't even come close. That year's 1,500 was won by Rashid Ramzi from Bahrain. He ran it in 3 minutes and 32 seconds. In just 50 years, that much improvement. Runners are getting faster, but it's not because humans are getting faster. Runners are getting faster because they're treating the sport of track and field, of running a 1,500 meter, as a profession. They're taking it seriously, right? They aren't just getting out there and running. They're not just saying, okay, my job is to run, I'm going to go run. Those folks in 1908, they're the same people as us. They haven't evolved. They don't have faster muscles, bigger lungs. They weren't taking it as seriously as the people nowadays. So here's an example of the kind of work being done beyond just running every day to make runners faster. This one's from the PBS program Nova.
Running. From Pheidippides, who ran the first Greek marathon, to Roger Bannister smashing the 4-minute mile, we've celebrated those who have run fastest. Is there a way to make our mechanical systems, our bodies, more efficient and faster? To find out, I've come to Southern Methodist University in Dallas to have a friendly race against Don Miguel, a competitive sprinter from Trinidad.
Left flat.
Our timekeeper, SMU professor Peter Weyand.
18.4 for David.
Weyand is a professor of speed. His lab is a high-tech lair equipped with ultra-fast cameras and a $100,000 treadmill designed to measure the force of a runner's step. Weyand believes that force is the key to speed, and he's about to show me why.
How fast is this? It's not as fast as it looks.
This is nothing! Gun it! Come on!
Good.
What do you got?
Wow, I'm like a human cheetah. Look at that. It's magnificent.
Yeah, you look great in slow motion.
Though I may be slow, when I looked at Don and me in slow motion, I was struck not by the differences, but the similarities.
So what you can see is the time each of you spends in the air and the time that each of you takes to pick the limb up and put it back down in front of the body for the next step is about the same. And that's true, generically speaking, from Usain Bolt to little old ladies.
Weyand has brought hundreds of runners through this lab, and it turns out that at top speed, every one of them, including me, spends almost exactly the same amount of time repositioning limbs in between steps, about 0.3 seconds. Our actual strides are happening, we're moving our legs at the same speed?
That's right. So when you're running...
That guy and me?
Competitive sprinter, you, a little old lady.
Our legs all go at the same speed.
The time to reposition the limbs is the same at the top speed of each of those runners.
So what makes Don faster?
What the competitor sprinters do is they hit the ground harder. And hitting the ground harder makes your body move faster.
When you put the graphs of Don's force and mine next to each other, the difference becomes clear. I'm hitting the ground with around 500 pounds of force. Don, 700. The only part I don't understand is, you're saying pushing down harder propels you forward faster, but it seems like pushing down harder would propel you up faster. I want to go that way.
In the acceleration portion of a race, runners tend to lean forward so they can push backward. But that's a very short portion of a race.
Wayan says after the first few steps, runners reach their maximum speed. From there, momentum keeps them moving forward. And the harder they hit the ground, the more time they spend in the air, and the more of their momentum they preserve.
You push down on the ground with your limbs to pop back up so you can maintain your forward momentum.
This all seems well and good, but if force is speed, how do I increase mine?
Typically, what the very fast people do is, can we freeze it on the next contact? When this foot comes down, the knees should be, in a good sprinter, those knees will be right together. If you eliminate the forward lean, get more upright, have your body be stiff, and then you want to smack the foot down harder.
Keep your body stiff. Slam harder. Good.
You felt the difference, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it felt like a totally different kind of running. I couldn't have told you if it was faster.
The peak forces before were running at about 450 pounds per step. The peak forces after are well over 500, 525 to 550. So that's a dramatic improvement in a matter of minutes just from implementing a short set of instructions.
Wow, that's amazing.
If you can do that for the entire race, you should come down by at least a half a second to a second.
Dog. All right, body upright, rigid hips. Hit the ground, hit the ground, hit the ground. Force down. Set.
Go!
Understanding the physics behind how we run
There you go. 16-7.
I shaved 2 seconds.
helped me more efficiently turn the energy from my muscles into speed.
My name is Matthew Lampros. I have a company called Celemental. It is my great privilege to get to work with many of you on your sales skills, on treating sales as a profession, right? Not just a job. You can reach out to me at any time, whenever you like. My email address is here. My phone number is here. If you'd like to schedule some time, just ask questions, get advice, run something past me, I'm always very happy to do that. You can do it at this web address here, which is celemental.info. My website is celemental.com, but my calendar, which you can access and set time with me on, is celemental.info. There are a lot of people at our disposal as salespeople who are doing the work for salespeople, just like the folks on that NOVA program. They're doing research, they're thinking things through, they're trying to improve us. They're thinking about not just selling, but making this more of a profession. And obviously, we're not quite at the level that athletes are in terms of having a $100,000 treadmill at our disposal. You can only get a degree, for example, of sales at a very small handful of universities. You can't get a doctorate of sales in any of them. There isn't an established expert in sales. There's no program that works for every kind of sales. But there are some really great insights, some great trend spotters, some great thoughts out there. All of that thinking, all of that advice is available to us, but the problem is it's in sales books. Funny thing about sales books is almost no one actually reads these books. Like once a month kind of reading, right? I'm not trying to pick on us. I'm not trying to say we're bad people, but almost no one does that. And even the people that do pick up sales books regularly, they usually don't actually read them cover to cover. They'll probably just skim them or put them up on the bookshelf. But here's the thing. There's a reason for that. It's not because we don't want to get better. It's because almost every sales book is framed as a system that we have to follow to get better. Do all these things, each and every one, and you can sell a lot more and do really well. A system. You have to follow this whole program. It's a program. It's asking us to change in order to get better at sales. But none of us has the time. I don't have the time. I don't think anyone listening or watching this has the time. We don't have the energy. We don't have the pipeline that's full enough that we can stop and switch gears. So just because the author says, look, this is what's going to make you better at sales, doesn't necessarily mean that's helpful to us. So because these books all exist out there that tell us, look, you can read this book and you're going to learn a lot about sales, but you got to change everything. That sort of stops us as a profession from taking the time to read these books. Completely understandable. So I'm here to suggest that we should be reading a sales book a month. That's our version of doing the research that we saw on Nova, where our goal is to be thinking about our job, J-O-B, as a career, as a profession that we want to master. But I also want to suggest that there's a better way to do this, a way that isn't all-encompassing. So right now, reading a sales book a month would be onerous, would be tedious, would be full of emotional commitment. And I'm going to cover in this video today how we can find better ways to do that. Books that I would suggest, categories of books, and how to get away with reading a book a month or more, something like that, so that you get better without it being this crazy cycle that the sales book industry wants us to be in. So first and most importantly, I would say stop reading these books to learn how to sell, to learn a system, even if they're written that way. Start reading them, even just skimming them, with two specific goals in mind. The first goal is look for insight, tricks, good ideas, techniques, advice, insight, right? The second is to look for trends. What seems to be happening? What do people start to see in other industries and across the country? Insights and trends are what I want you to think about. Okay? Okay. So let's start with the books that I would suggest you read. So I'm going to categorize them in 5 types of books that will help us better improve our profession. So here are the 5. The first are reference books. These are educational books. They're not meant to be read as a book. They're meant to have resources in them. The second are books based on principles. So key principles that matter. Books about that. Fundamentals, right? We need to remind ourselves of these things. These are things that all of us already know, but sometimes forget. It's excellent to read a fundamental book, a principle book in the middle of our pipeline review, because it allows us to go, oh yeah, that's right. I got to make sure I do those kinds of things. The third are technique books. Not necessarily you have to do everything here to be good at sales, but here's a technique that works, and here's another technique that might work. And then the fourth are the dreaded system books. They are very valuable, but they are written in a way that says you must do everything here in order for it to work, which is not true, but and we won't read them that way, but they are valuable books. And the fifth are what I call empathy books. So I'll cover each one of those. I want to suggest books from each of these categories that you might want to look at reading or adding to your library. Of course, sales books are added each year, and of course I'll be talking about some classics and some currents. But stay on top of these 5 categories and think of each sales book you look and try to figure out which category the sales book you're looking at fits into, and it gives you a sense of how to go about reading that book. So let's start with reference books. So these are books that help us understand a tool we can use or a discipline we need to get to know better. Some of my favorites in this category are things like How to Read a Financial Statement. This isn't a book, obviously, that tells you how to sell, but this is a book that gives us the information that we need so that we can speak the language of finance. It gives us the information that we need so that we can read a financial report or a spreadsheet put in front of us and be fluent in that language when we're dealing with finance type of people. Other books that I think are great in this sort of reference category are books about how to use phrases and how to communicate. Words That Sell, How to Say It, Perfect Phrases for Sales Referrals. All excellent books that give you sort of a starting place when you have writer's block or when you're starting something new, or even if you've done it before, it gives you maybe some fresh ideas for how to say things in a way that might influence other people. this one called How to Say It is particularly good because it not only has sales references, but it has references for asking for a referral, writing a gracious thank you card, accepting or declining an invitation, sending a congratulations or a condolence. Very helpful. Then, as you know, I like to draw, and so there's a whole series of books that I find helpful. There's probably 50 out there, but a few of my favorite on how to use the whiteboard are a series of books by Dan Rome, whose books tend to be very systems-oriented. You've got to do all of these things. But in his case, I think that they're worth reading beginning to end because it gives you a sense of what the system might be, and you can kind of pick and choose. Excellent books for how to communicate visually. There's also one called Whiteboard Selling, one called Visual Selling. I buy books on hand lettering because not only should your handwriting be legible when you go on a whiteboard, but you can also turn your handwriting into a meaningful icon instead of just the word. It can actually mean something. And people tend to pay attention to those kinds of things. How to read these books. I suggest that these books are not books that you would read cover to cover. I suggest that you maybe grab a chapter every once in a while, with the exception of maybe some of the drawing ones where there's a drawing system. I suggest that these are books that you would have on your desk that you can pull up from time to time. I'm writing a letter, I should grab this one, or I know that I am putting together an ROI that has to compete with some financial problems that they have with their company, so I should make sure that I'm doing this correctly. I think they're also great books to have as a company, and like a mini library maybe by the front lobby, where you've got 20 books that are great reference books that everybody can use when they need them. They are not books that I suggest you read. They are books that I suggest you use as reference. Okay, so the second kind of books are what I call principal books. These books are what you might call the desk calendar of books, something that we should have in front of us, I don't know if daily, and I don't even know if weekly, but maybe weekly, certainly several times a month, to remind us of what we already knew. They put perspective back into our pipeline each and every time we spend time with them. My favorite books like these are by Jeffrey J. Fox. He's written 10, maybe 8. There are 10 really great ones. They're small books. The chapters are short. They're kind of like small blog posts, but each chapter is an idea, a principle, a reminder of something that we need to remember about customers or selling or influence or persuasion, overcoming objections. They're very well done books. Jeffrey J. Fox is my favorite. There are others. Jeffrey Gitomer, of course, has several books. Of course, I like his content, but it's not as bite-sized as Jeffrey J. Fox's. But they're also nice, simple little books that you can grab a couple pages of from time to time and read. I think that these kinds of books, principal books, are great books to use at the start of a PAR meeting. Just something that both you and your manager can use to read a couple. It's basically a half page in these books because it's, 2 or 3 pages of very small pages. And it's good to reflect or remind us, or, oh yeah, that's right, or we have to, maybe that would help in this deal. So they're very good reflection deals, very good reminder deals, books. So Peter Drucker, by the way, I should mention, is another example. He's got great books about business principles. And I think they're good books that get to the point, inspirationally help you remember the things that you need to remember to be good at sales, to be great at sales. So how do we read these books? These books are 1 or 2 pages at a time, maybe once a week. It's something like your old flip calendar, like the Gary Larson calendar without the humor. You just want it there to remind you. Okay, technique books. These are books that help us find insight into what's working for other people. Now, I said that in a very specific way. These are books to help us find insight into what is working for other people. These books are not written that way. They're written as this is how you sell, this is what works, but it's not true. These are books that are written for insight into what's working for other people. Nothing works for everyone, even though authors tend to think that they do. Maybe they have to say that to sell their book. there are good ideas that people have out there. There are piece parts that might work for you, and there are parts that just don't work for anyone. I spend a lot of time on cold calling, and it tends to work very well in some segments, and works phenomenal in others. And then I have a customer who's in the internet data communications business in the Midwest, in a very particular city in the Midwest, and we did this process in their city, in their key city in the Midwest, and it bombed. We just couldn't get it to work. I have another customer who's in a completely different field in the exact same city, and we had huge success with it. So nothing works for everyone. It just really depends what industry you're in, what city you're in, what's going on with the trends. So these technique books are really good for good ideas. So generally these books sell themselves as what will work for you, but these, along with sales system books, are the kinds of books that stop us as salespeople from developing the practice of reading sales books. So we got to be very careful with them. Use these books to look for insight and advice, thoughts, ideas, not to change your life. So great books in this category, of course, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Yeah, the title says this is what you have to do to be highly successful, but I know a ton of highly successful people that use only one of those habits, or none of those habits, or 5 of them, or have other habits. So they're good ideas for what work for other people that you might be able to pull up. A lot of the books by Steve Schiffman, most of you know Steve Schiffman. He's got, that man must have 30 or 40 books out. He's got really good ideas or techniques in there that work. It used to be that he sold his books as systems. Now I think his books are written more as techniques and insight. Just be careful not to take everything in as this is the way to do things, because it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. It has worked for other people. They're great pick and choose books. A good example of pick and choose from one of Steve Schiffman's books is his idea that if you call somebody and leave 5 or 6 voicemails and they don't call you back, you should have your compadre call. So like I would call and say, hi, it's Matthew Lampros. I was calling from Sacramento. My number is 801-983-5900. If you get a chance to follow up, that'd be awesome. I'll be around today. I'll be here till about 5:30. I'll leave 5, 6 of those voicemails. I don't hear back. Then I have one of our other guys here, Jed Cowan, call and say, leave the voicemail with the same person. Hi, this is Jed Cowan. I was calling about Matthew Lampros. If you get a chance to call me back, I'd be grateful. According to Steve Schiffman's technique, that gets more callbacks, and I've tried it, and it does. So it's a little tidbit from his book that I think is great in a series of technique books that you can use occasionally, and that's why those books are so great. The best, however, in my opinion, technique books are written by Jeff Thule. Mastering the Art of Complex Sales and Exceptional Selling being the best of the bunch. But again, even here, you just want to look for good ideas, not life changers. Those books are written as this is how you do it, and they have really good ideas in them, but they're not life changers. So how to read these books. These books are best read, quote unquote, while you're doing something else. You want to train your mind to treat this as interesting information, not worth focusing 100% of your brain on. So I love Audible and iTunes. I download these books. I listen to them when I'm driving, when I'm swimming. They're super simple to listen to, and they don't require your attention. You hear an idea every once in a while, you can jot down or store in your memory bank. Just enough going on in the back, then you can filter out the bad stuff and grab a good idea from time to time. I also really like the advent of the Bluetooth speaker. My favorite can be used in the shower. So I love to stick these things in the shower. They're waterproof. You can control your phone or whatever you have from the device, and you get 10 minutes of sales technique maybe once or twice a week, maybe a couple times a month, whatever it is best for you. But it's a great way to stay on top of your profession, not just treat selling like selling, running like running, but treat it like a profession. And you'll have these books in the background. It's easy, it's not onerous, you're not trying to change your life, and you get really good insight from them. So look at those books, 7 Habits, Schiffman books, and especially Jeff Thule books for technique books. The next series of books are what we call systems books. Now, I call them the dreaded systems books because they all tend to contradict each other. As you know, the Challenger Sale is a book that you all use and that your organization believes in. So that's the book that should be the systems book that you use. However, there are so many other good ideas out there in these systems books that they're hard to ignore It's just that they tend to contradict each other. And so the trick to reading these books is to gather information from them without deciding to go for the whole system. So some of the best systems books out there are the Challenger Sell. Jill Konrath has a couple, one called Snap Selling, her brand new one called Agile Selling. Book Yourself Solid by Michael Port. It's a great book. Getting Things Done is a systems book for time management, which is wonderful, but again, it's a system. Get Clients Now. Tons and tons and tons of books out there that are specifically meant as a system. Follow these steps. The reason it's important to point these books out as a category is because of the conflict that you can find when you read one book versus the other. A great example is Jill Konrath, who wrote a very good book called Snap Selling, and it was written as a systems book. You need to do all these things and this will work. I don't believe that's ever the case with any book, but that's how they're written. Then she's come out with a new book called Agile Selling, which says, oh, by the way, no, these are the things that you should do in order to be successful at selling. And they're not the same. So you got to be careful of these books. Here's the easiest way to spot a systems book. When you're at the airport at Barnes & Noble and the book is facing you, that means that the author paid for that. They have to pay a couple dollars per book in order for the bookstore to actually point the book towards you. It's an advertising scheme. In order for an author to give up a couple dollars per book, they have to have something behind it, meaning, like it's $20 for the book, but they're going to make $2,000 off the course, off the system. So they're okay to lose a couple bucks on the books because they want you eventually to buy the system. So that's a good indication it's a system book. When you get a system book, again, these are ideal books to listen to in the background. They're not something you want to take a ton of notes on. They are full of great ideas and great insight, but you want to be careful that they don't contradict the process that you already have in place. I like to skim these books, and probably the number one hint I give is that you should skip the first couple of chapters. Chapters 1, 2, sometimes 3, maybe even 4, are usually all about why this is the best system in the world. If you skip those chapters and go on to chapter 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you'll hear really good ideas and really good thought that you can kind of pick and choose from without having to make it a big system. Here are the most important books, I think. The most life-changing books for salespeople that really help us be better salespeople. I call them empathy books. They're some of the most important books to add to your reading list. They're books that help us understand what it's like to be our prospect. So I like to read books that are instructive for small business owners, for example, or books that give advice to middle managers, right? They're not written for me, the salesperson. They're written for the middle manager. Or they're books that talk about how to deal with employees or talk about moving up the ladder. They're books that aren't necessarily fun for us to read, necessarily, but if you read them with the angle of empathy, with if I was in your shoes, you'll get a really good sense of what it's like to be your prospect, better understand them. Never a bad thing to understand your prospect better, always a good thing. Of course, you can find books like this on Amazon all over the place. I like to take a night every once in a while and go to Barnes & Noble, and they have a Starbucks in there, sit down and have a drink, and have a stack of books that I skim. Books that my prospect would probably read to improve their business, their career, but that have no bearing on me because I get a sense of what their life is like. So I'll give you an example. Pretend I sold to ballerinas, right? A book written for ballerinas wouldn't benefit me at all. But if one of my big segments were ballerinas, I want to read a book or two written for them. I'll see a chapter in there like on how to deal with toe pain, or a chapter on what it's like to have to travel with 30 people at a time. Things I probably hadn't thought of and probably don't bear on the product that I sell them, but help me understand them as a prospect better, which makes me a better salesperson. Sometimes the best way to find books or articles in this empathy segment are by looking for conferences the group might go to. So the keynote speaker is often an author. So look for the keynote speaker, try to figure out what books that person's written, read their books or articles. Gives you a sense of what they're addressing and what that segment, that prospect segment is facing in their job that has nothing to do with you. Heck, I even read the titles of the speeches that are going to be given in the conference, because you'll get a sense of what's important to them and what hurdles they face just by looking at the title of the talks that are given. So how to read these empathy books. They're great books to skim. I don't necessarily read them in depth. Sometimes I just read the chapter titles. So I just get, things that they're thinking about or that they're worrying about. I skim them. I'm really not trying to read how to manage a union employee, for example, but it's good to know that something my prospect is having to think about and worry about and learn about. Okay, so we're full circle. My goal was not only to give you some good books to consider, but more importantly, to help you understand some good ways to read them, so that you actually do that. We need to treat our profession as a profession, which means that we need to constantly look for ideas to improve. We need to talk to people and hear from people that are doing research, that are putting their finger on the pulse of the market, that are looking for trends, so that we can incorporate that into the way that we sell. The cycle of avoiding these books, because they take so much emotional energy, because they tell you to change the way you sell, has to be avoided. But we can't, in the name of avoiding all of that garbage, not read the insights that are in these books. Get a subscription to Audible or iTunes or something like that. Buy a Bluetooth speaker for the shower. Plug in something you can wear in the gym or in the swimming pool. Have a date night at Barnes & Noble once in a while. Get a coffee, sit down, skim books. The key is to make it easy on yourself. Make it easy to dig in and fish for insights and for trends. Don't try to change your world. Just try to get a few good ideas from time to time, okay? My name is Matthew Lampros. I believe that selling is a noble profession. I believe it's in its purest form. Salespeople are the major driving factor in the economy. Because of the ideas we push and the products that we sell our customers, their businesses do better. And if their businesses do better, they buy more products from other people and they hire more people and the economy goes better. If I am good at communicating, persuading, giving insight, I can help make the economy move forward. If I am stuck, I struggle and the economy struggles. I know prospects resist us. I get that. They don't trust us. The more we know, the more we learn, the harder we work at making our profession a profession, the more we're going to be worthy of that trust and the easier our job will be to be successful at. So good luck out there. Please reach out to me. I love helping. It's not a sales pitch. I'll help you for free up to a certain point, but I'm happy to help you. This isn't about me charging you anything. I just want to see you do well. And I have and I will always be happy and grateful to put energy and time into your career to make you better if it's something that would help you. So call me or reach out to me, and I'm happy to do it. Good luck out there.